weekly plunge into fish keeping. Welcome to the Aquarium Hour.
Hey everyone, Steve Jackson here, aquarium DIY enthusiast and proud creator of what my friends call unnecessarily complex but somehow brilliant filtration systems. Can't wait to dive into fish behavior today. I've got some wild stories about my angelfish soap opera.
Hello, I'm Ravi Kumar, and I've spent the last 15 years recreating microhabitats of the Amazon basin, currently maintaining 7 biotope-accurate tanks, though my wife keeps telling me 8 would be excessive. But you know what they say about even numbers.
Hi fish fans, Maria Garcia here, and let me tell you, running an aquarium store for 12 years has taught me that every tank is basically a tiny underwater reality show. The drama, the romance, the territory disputes. Speaking of which, Steve, did you say something about an angelfish soap opera?
Oh man, where do I even start? So I have this pair of angelfish. Let's call them Romeo and Juliet, except it turned out Juliet was actually a Julian. And Romeo wasn't interested at all in the fancy courtship dance Julian kept trying to do. Meanwhile, this female in the corner, who I named Drama Queen, kept photobombing their interaction.
That's actually super common with angelfish. They're one of those species where personality really shines through. I had a customer last week who came in completely baffled because their angelfish would literally rearrange the tank decorations, like actually picking up and moving small pieces of driftwood.
Well, technically speaking, that behavior mirrors their natural habitat interactions. In the Amazon, particularly during the rainy season, they'll actively manipulate their environment to create ideal spawning sites. Though I have to admit, I've never seen one redecorate quite as enthusiastically as some aquarium specimens do. It's fascinating how they've adapted these natural behaviors to captive environments.
Speaking of adaptations, you should see what my tetras do during feeding time. I built this automatic feeder with multiple dispensing points, trying to ensure even distribution. But these little guys figured out the timing and now they've split into 3 distinct groups, each claiming their own dispenser. They even have, lookouts who signal when the food's coming.
Oh my gosh, yes! Tetras are way smarter than people give them credit for. I've noticed that different species have totally different personalities too. Like black phantoms are these shy, romantic types who spend forever courting, while serpent tetras are basically the mean girls of the freshwater world.
Actually, that's a fascinating observation about the serpes. Their aggressive tendencies are directly linked to their natural habitats. In the wild, they occupy areas with dense vegetation and compete fiercely for feeding spots. But what's really interesting is how they maintain social hierarchies, even in captivity. I've documented cases where subordinate fish develop different feeding patterns just to avoid confrontation.
You know what's weird? I've noticed my corydoras have distinct personalities too, which surprised me because, well, they're bottom feeders. But I swear one of them is like the tank's hall monitor. If there's any squabbling up top, this little guy zooms up, does a quick loop around the troublemakers, and heads back down. Works every time.
That's hilarious. Corys are total characters. I call them the golden retrievers of the fish world. Social, goofy, and somehow both clumsy and graceful at the same time. Fools. But they're also incredibly emotionally intelligent for fish. They pick up on tank dynamics really well.
You know, there's actually some fascinating research about social learning in corydoras. They've been observed engaging in what we call social transmission of information. In simpler terms, they learn from watching each other. I've set up experiments in my tanks where, how do I explain this? Basically, if one cory figures out where food regularly appears, they'll actually guide others to the spot.
That explains so much. I thought I was imagining things when my albino cory seemed to be teaching the newer ones my feeding schedule. But here's what really blows my mind. My bettas. Everyone talks about how aggressive they are, but I've had some that were total sweethearts and others that were, well, let's just say they lived up to their fighting fish name.
Right, beta personalities are so distinct that I actually try to help customers interview their potential beta before taking one home. I had this one beta bright blue guy who would literally play peekaboo with kids through the glass. Then there was this other one who would flare at his own reflection for hours like he was practicing his tough guy routine.
The variation in beta behavior is particularly interesting from a scientific perspective. While their aggressive tendencies are well documented, Their capacity for individual personality traits suggests a much more complex cognitive structure than previously thought. I've been keeping detailed records of behavioral patterns in my wild-type bettas, and the range of responses to identical stimuli is remarkable.
You want to talk about complex behavior? Let me tell you about my rainbow fish. So I built this elaborate current system with multiple power heads, right? Totally over-engineered, as usual. But these fish actually figured out how to use the different current streams for what I can only describe as fish parkour.
Fish parkour! I love it! But you know what's even better? Watching how different species interact with each other. Like I have these coolie loaches that basically appointed themselves as the cleanup crew for my angelfish breeding pair. They wait until the angels are done eating, and then do this synchronized swimming routine to clean up the leftovers.
That's a perfect example of how fish can develop mutually beneficial relationships even in captivity. In nature, we see similar symbiotic relationships, particularly in reef environments. But what's fascinating is how freshwater species can adapt and create their own social structures in our artificial environments. Though I should note that not all interspecies interactions are so harmonious.
Oh man, tell me about it. I once had a pleco who appointed himself tank sheriff. Any fish that got too close to his driftwood got a very stern tail whipping. Had to completely redesign the hardscape to give everyone their space. But you know what's really interesting? Once I added more hiding spots, he totally chilled out.
That's because fish need their own territories. Just like us, they need their personal space. I always tell my customers to think of their tank like a tiny underwater neighborhood. It's possible. You've got your social butterflies who want to be in the middle of everything, your homebodies who need their quiet corners, and then there's always that one fish who acts like they're the HOA president.
The territorial behavior you're describing actually varies significantly based on species, tank parameters, and social grouping. For instance, in my observation of South American cichlids, well, let me rephrase that. What I've noticed is that even highly territorial species can show remarkable flexibility if their environmental needs are met properly.
You know what? I think that's really the key to understanding fish personalities. They're not just little swimming robots following their instincts. They're complex creatures with their own preferences, quirks, and social needs. Every tank is different because every fish is different, and that's what makes this hobby so incredibly fascinating. Whether you're watching a tiny tetra outsmart your feeder system or a beta playing peekaboo, there's always something new to learn about these amazing animals.
Thanks for swimming with us on the Aquarium Hour. Until next time.